before the engines fired, before the green flag dropped, before a single lap of the Coca-Cola 600 was run at Charlotte Motor Speedway on May 24th, 2026, a man walked alone into the infield, kneeled down on the grass, laid 8 white flowers on his brother's number, made the sign of the cross, stood back up and walked away. No microphone, no speech, no audience needed. Kurt Busch said goodbye to Kyle Busch in 40 seconds, and it became the single most powerful image from the entire Charlotte weekend. To understand what that moment actually cost Kurt Busch, you first need to understand who Kyle Busch was, and what the two of them built together inside this sport. Kyle Thomas Busch was born May 2nd, 1985 in Las Vegas, into a family that already breathed racing. His father Tom had raced locally. His older brother Kurt, 7 years his senior, had already begun climbing the NASCAR ladder and set a competitive benchmark that Kyle would spend his entire career chasing and eventually surpassing. Kurt himself said in 2001, "You think I'm a pretty good race car driver? Wait until you see my brother. He's the best driver in the family." That turned out to be true. Kyle came up through go-karts, Legends cars, and late models before signing with Rick Hendrick's organization in 2003. He made his O'Reilly Series debut on May 24th, 2003, finishing second to Matt Kenseth at Charlotte Motor Speedway, the very track where his family would gather to honor him more than 2 decades later. He became the Cup Series' youngest winner in his 31st Cup start, winning at Auto Club Speedway, and from there the wins never stopped. His nicknames tell you everything. He arrived as Shrub, the younger brother. He left as Rowdy, a nod to a character from Days of Thunder and to the aggressive, unrelenting style that defined every lap he ever ran. He joined Joe Gibbs Racing in 2008, paired the colorful number 18 with M&M's sponsorship, and created one of the most recognizable combinations in the sport's history. He spent 15 seasons with JGR, winning 56 of his 63 Cup Series victories there, along with Cup Series championships in 2015 and 2019. He moved to Richard Childress Racing in 2023, taking the wheel of the number 8 Chevrolet. The numbers are staggering. 63 Cup Series wins, ranking 9th all time. 102 wins in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, the most by any driver in that series history. 69 wins in the Craftsman Truck Series, also the most ever, a combined 234 wins across NASCAR's 3 National Touring Series, more than any driver who has ever competed. He is the only driver to win at least 1 Cup Series race in 19 consecutive seasons, from 2005 through 2023. He is the only driver ever to sweep all 3 series, Trucks, O'Reilly, and Cup, in the same weekend, and he did it twice, both times at Bristol in 2010 and 2017. As a team owner, his Kyle Busch Motorsports operation produced 100 wins and 2 championships, developing future Cup stars including Eric Jones and Christopher Bell. You loved him or you hated him, but you damn sure paid attention, because when Rowdy showed up, as he did at NASCAR tracks all over the country for 25 years, he was a threat. Then came the week that ended everything, May 10th, 2026. During a Cup Series race at Watkins Glen, broadcasters noted that Kyle was fighting a sinus cold. Near the end of the race, he asked for a doctor to prepare a shot for when he crossed the finish line. May 15th, 1 week before the Coca-Cola 600, Kyle won the Craftsman Truck Series race at Dover, piloting the Spire Motorsports No. 7 Chevrolet. It was the last race he ever competed in. Sometime the following week, he reportedly became unresponsive while testing in a Chevrolet racing simulator in Concord, North Carolina. He was rushed to a hospital in Charlotte. The Busch family's statement provided the medical picture. Severe pneumonia progressed into sepsis, resulting in rapid and overwhelming associated complications. His death certificate indicated he had been dealing with bacterial pneumonia for days to weeks before it became septic, leading to blood clots forming in his bloodstream. On May 21st, 2026, Kyle Busch died. He was 41 years old. The reaction across the motorsports world was immediate and raw. "I thought it was a prank, completely surreal," said one fan who had followed him since 2006. Drivers inside the garage struggled to process it. "This was a guy I expected to be racing with at the end of my career," said one. "A lot of the reason that it's so unbelievable is because you envision them as larger than life. So when something like this happens, you're like, no, that can't be, because he was such a big figure." Earlier that same day, the Indianapolis 500 held a moment of silence in his honor. 41 is too young, and his absence is quite literally a chair and a seat that cannot be filled. Charlotte Motor Speedway became the center of a 3-day memorial that the sport had rarely seen. Every Cup Series car that rolled into the garage carried a Kyle Busch decal. The name Rowdy was affixed above the driver's window on every machine. His number 8 was placed atop Charlotte's scoring pylon. A seat was left empty at the driver's meeting. Ryan Blaney wiped his face under a Kyle Busch ball cap during media availability. Chase Elliott walked into the press center wearing a Brexton Busch t-shirt. William Byron, who earned 7 of his 8 Truck Series wins driving for Kyle Busch Motorsports, wore a KBM shirt. Daniel Suarez showed up to Coca-Cola 600 practice in Kyle Busch gear. Richard Childress Racing announced it was suspending use of the number 8 entirely, switching to the number 33 beginning that Sunday at Charlotte. The statement from RCR read, "Kyle Busch was instrumental in the design of RCR's stylized number 8, and it has become synonymous with Kyle and an important symbol for his fans and the NASCAR industry. No one can carry it forward to the level that he did. The number 8 is reserved and ready for Brexton Busch when he is ready to go NASCAR racing." The parallel to Dale Earnhardt's number 3 after Daytona 2001, retired and then eventually passed to a family member, was not lost on anyone inside the sport. NASCAR also removed Kyle Busch from the Cup Series point standings, following conversations with RCR about being empathetic of the impact to those who would see his name in the standings. Sunday evening, May 24th. The Busch family made their first public appearance since Kyle's death, walking into Charlotte Motor Speedway where his father Tom, his mother Gay, his older brother Kurt, along with Samantha Busch, Kyle's wife, and their children Brexton, who had just turned 11, and 4-year-old Lennox. Drivers and team owners formed around them. Richard Childress stood nearby. Bagpipes rang out "Amazing Grace." Fans raised Kyle Busch flags. Thousands held up 8 fingers. NASCAR CEO Steve O'Donnell addressed the family and the crowd. Every racetrack was Kyle Busch's home. He competed like he had something to prove every single race, when in reality he had already proven everything. What I think we'll miss the most isn't the wins. It's the guy who quietly wanted to help a teammate, give some advice, the husband, the father, the guy who quietly did things for others when no one was watching. He turned directly to Kyle's family. "Samantha, I want you to know that this sport stands with you, and your children are NASCAR family forever. Brexton and Lennox, your dad loves you with all his heart. Everyone gathered here, everyone behind you, everyone watching on TV, and all those people up in that grandstand, they are your family, and we've got you." The cars rolled out for pace laps and executed a missing man formation in Kyle's honor. On lap 8, fans across the grandstands rose and raised 8 fingers in unison as the field thundered past. But all of that, the ceremony, the speech, the bagpipes, the formation laps, was planned, scripted, executed with institutional precision. It was moving, and it was right. The sport doing what the sport does when it needs to mark something significant for a large audience. Kurt's flowers were none of that. Before the ceremony, before the crowd assembled, Kurt Busch walked to the center of the infield alone. He knelt down. He laid 8 white flowers directly on the number 8 logo that had been painted into the grass in honor of his brother. He made the sign of the cross. He stood back up. He rejoined the family for the pre-race moment of silence. The entire sequence took 40 seconds. The number of flowers is not accidental. 8 was Kyle's number at Richard Childress Racing. It is the number RCR has reserved in perpetuity for Brexton Busch. It is the number fans were raising fingers for on lap 8 of the race. Kurt chose 8 flowers deliberately. The sign of the cross is a moment of religious sincerity that cannot be manufactured. It was not a performance for a broadcast. It was a private act that happened to have cameras present. There is also something in the physicality of kneeling worth acknowledging. Kurt Busch spent his entire career in a car that demanded control. Hands on the wheel, body braced, posture locked. Kneeling is an act of surrender that stands in direct contrast to everything competition asks of a driver. Coming from a man who spent decades behind a wheel at 200 miles an hour, it carries particular weight. To understand what that gesture cost him, you need to know what Kurt has already been carrying. In July 2022, he suffered a significant concussion during a qualifying crash at Pocono. The injury did not heal the way anyone hoped. After months of evaluation and attempting a return, Kurt was forced to step away from full-time competition permanently at age 44, with 34 Cup wins and a championship. Not by choice, but because his body would not allow him to continue. That is its own particular kind of grief, the kind that comes from losing something before you feel finished with it. Older brothers are not supposed to outlast their younger ones. Kurt had already lost his career, now he has lost Kyle. Kurt won the Coca-Cola 600 at this track in 2010. On Sunday, he was standing at the infield of Charlotte Motor Speedway, placing flowers on his brother's number before a race Kyle was registered to run. The video of Kurt laying the flowers spread faster than almost any other image from the Charlotte weekend, and the response was consistent across a fan base that rarely agrees on anything. The comments were not about racing. They were not about championships or wins or statistics. They are about a man kneeling in a field and doing something that any sibling who has ever loved another sibling immediately understands. After 500 plus miles of racing and post-race jet dryers, every flower Kurt laid down remained exactly where he had placed them. The rest of the weekend produced its own unforgettable images. Bubba Wallace knelt over the number 8 painted in the infield. The entire garage stood in silence as the number 33 RCR hauler was unloaded Saturday morning. A young fan sat alone on the steps of the number 8 hauler. Corey Day raced the truck that Kyle had been scheduled to drive in the Craftsman race. Lane Riggs and Ross Chastain both performed Kyle's signature showman's bow after their respective wins. Dale Earnhardt Jr. narrated a tribute video package for Amazon Prime. And Daniel Suarez, a Kyle Busch Motorsports alum, won the rain-shortened Coca-Cola 600, overcome with emotion on pit road upon learning the official results. It was his first career crown jewel victory. Kyle Busch is survived by his wife Samantha, son Brexton, daughter Lennox, and his parents Tom and Gay. Brexton, already competing and winning in youth racing, will one day inherit the number 8. Kurt Busch, the older brother who has now outlived the competitor he once described as the best driver in the family, laid 8 white flowers on that number on a Sunday evening in Charlotte. You do not need to know NASCAR to feel what Kurt Busch communicated in those 40 seconds. You just need to have someone in your life that you love.